Book club will not be over. We're just gonna finish the book, and it might take a break from reading for another couple weeks. But we will still. I still like doing it on Monday, actually. We literally have like 20 pages left. I can do this. I've read 30 pages of much denser books in a single night, so it's very possible. I mean, I can't stop. There's no more natural breaks. The train has no brakes right now. All gas, no brakes is the climax. Excuse me. I feel like I need like a blanket. I'm gonna mute the mic next time I have to burp. Which might be soon, but I'm gonna mute the mic next time so you guys can't judge me. Chapter 23. Let's recap. We couldn't bear to see... Still, the thought of Sophie giving up, too, was too much to bear. It was unbearable. And that was exactly what was happening. Or so I thought. But Sophie didn't give up. Sophie lost her goddamn mind. Sophie lost her mind. Chapter 23. It happened suddenly. Although thinking about it, we realized it had been coming for some time. The page expresses itself with a tear. That's beautiful, man. Arashi. I don't know if I'm saying your name right, but God bless you. I said I wouldn't cry today. Or ever. I said I wouldn't cry ever. But, God damn it. 1 minute, I can't do this. I only know the vague details of what happens next. It happened suddenly. Although, thinking about it, we realized it had been coming for some time. 1 minute, Sophie was standing quiet and peaceful with the rest of us at the sawmill. The next minute, she was running around, banging her head against the posts and kicking sawdust up at the heap of meaning, and wanting to climb up on it. And she would have pulled the whole thing apart had Otto and Huge Hans not taken a hold and kept a tight grip on her. It was the day before the museum people were coming to pack up the heap of meaning. And the meaning, or what was left of it, was forever on its way out of Tearing. It's not their meaning, it's ours, Sophie screamed. And only then did it occur to us that it was the first time in 6 days that Sophie had said anything. We sold it to them. But we can't sell the meaning. Sophie hammered with her fists at Otto's chest and stomach, and I could see that it was hurting him. Then Huge Hans got hold of her by the arms and twisted them behind her back, and now it was Sophie who was hurting. I knew Sophie was right. Meaning is not something you can sell. Either it's there or it isn't. Our having sold the heap of meaning had deprived it of its meaning, if there had ever been any. But I didn't wonder about that, because if it had never been there, then it wouldn't be Sophie, but Pierre Anton who was right. But that's what we've done, and there's no more to be said, Otto shouted back with such fury that I knew he too had realized that we shouldn't have ever done so. But then it means nothing, Sophie yelled. Oh, come on, Sophie. Who cares about that heap? Huge Hans shouted. And I found myself thinking that with the money from the museum, he'd always be able to buy himself a new and better bike than his neon yellow racer. Okay, sorry, I shouldn't have kept the light on. With the money from the museum, he'd always be able to buy himself a new and better bike than his neon yellow racer. So what did he care? If the heap means nothing, then Pierre Anton's right and nothing matters, Sophie went on. Nothing. Stop it, Sophie, Gerda yelled. Yeah, shut up, Sophie, said Jan Johann. Shut up, Sophie, chimed in Elise, Hussein, Ursula Marie, Holy Carl, and a bunch of others too. But Sophie wasn't going to shut up. No way. Sophie started screaming even louder. Nothing, she screamed. Nothing, 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 nothing. Sophie screamed and screamed. She screamed so loud and so piercingly, it made our ears ring and hurt right to the bone. But the worst thing was that with that scream, it was like everything fell apart. As though the heap of meaning truly no longer had any meaning. And with that, all else lost its meaning too. Spring, summer, fall, winter, joy, sorrow, love, hate, birth, life, death. It was all the same. The same. One. Nothing. It wasn't just me who understood. And with that revelation, it was like the devil himself took a hold of us. Hussein lashed out at Ursula Marie for making him give up his prayer mat. Huge Hans kicked into Hussein and got back at him for the bike. Elise scratched at Otto and bit him as hard as she could. And then Ursula Marie hit out at Elise. And Sophie laid into Huge Hans and tore at his hair until it came away in great tufts in her hand. Jan Johann threw himself at Sophie and started punching away at her. Holy Carl joined him, since it was also Sophie who had come up with the idea about Jesus and the Rosewood Cross. Frederick gave Macon a slap in the face, and soon they were rolling around in the sawdust. But then Macon wrestled herself free when Lady William delivered Frederick a kick between the ribs. Macon went for Gerda now, while Lady William was floored by Annalee, just as little Ingrid cracked Annalee over the head with one of her crutches. And Henrik grabbed the other one of little Ingrid's crutches and thrust little Ingrid on the floor. Riot. Sea Moose, hello. I'm busy right now, sorry. And Henrik grabbed the other one of little Ingrid's crutches and thrust little Ingrid onto the floor. That was all I saw, before Gerda jumped me from behind and I was pulled down. Gerda on top of me, and we tumbled around in the sawdust among all the others. Our fists hit home, untrained yet hard. I pulled at Gerda's hair and she at mine. Then she got a hold of my earring and tore, and I screamed in pain. Her astonishment at suddenly sitting there with my earring in her hand allowed me to throw her off and leap to my feet. I brought my hand up to my ear, and it was wet with sticky, warm blood. My eye caught sight only of more blood in the chaos of fighting bodies. Blood that ran from the faces of my classmates and gradually was staining the sawdust and the concrete floor beneath. It was like we wanted to kill one another. And at once, I knew I had to go get Pierre Anton. I managed to kick myself free of Gerda's grip on my shins. I pushed my way through the ruckus, disappeared out through the door, and ran off down the road. I ran as hard as I could. Ran like I'd never run before. I gasped for breath and got a stitch, and my throat and legs hurt, but I kept on running. I didn't know what I was going to say to Pierre Anton, to make him come back with me to the sawmill. All I knew was that he had to come, and that I had to, needed to, must get him there. Must get him back there. Pierre Anton was sitting on his branch in the plum tree, staring emptily at nothing. Good night. I could see his blue sweater from a distance, among the light green of the beginning buds. I ran until I reached the tree, then stopped dead on the sidewalk, and at first could not say so much as a word, but could only cough and spit and gasp for the air that was all too reluctant to fill my lungs. Pierre Anton considered my efforts in astonishment, and not without amusement. "To what do we owe the honor, Agnes?" he said politely, though with a clearly mocking undertone. I ignored his mockery. Sophie's gone crazy, I stammered, as soon as I'd gotten enough breath back to speak. They've all gone berserk. You have to come. I was about to try to say more. I was about to say more to try and persuade him, though I wasn't quite sure what. But Pierre Anton slid from his branch without a word, hung for a moment from his arms, and then let himself drop to the grass below. He disappeared into the yard, only to appear again a moment later on his old gent's bike. Then he sped off, allowing me no chance at all to keep up. By the time I got back to the sawmill, Pierre Anton's bike was lying by the roadside where he'd let go of it, and there was no sign of Pierre Anton. The place was deathly silent. I pushed open the door cautiously and went inside. It was a gruesome sight that met my eyes. 7A were standing in a semicircle around Pierre Anton. Noses were beaten askew, eyebrows had been cut, teeth were missing, lips were gashed and swollen, eyes were red and bruised, an ear was all but torn away, and one or two looked like they could hardly keep themselves upright. All were smeared with blood and sawdust. But that wasn't what I saw. What I saw was the hatred. Hatred, more hatred, all against all. I pulled the door shut and edged my way along the wall into the sawmill. Pierre Anton's gaze went from one face to another. "What a bunch of half-wits," he exclaimed. He shook his head and moved slightly forward. "If nothing matters, then there's nothing worth getting mad about. And if there's nothing worth getting mad about, then there's nothing worth fighting about either." He looked around at each one of us, as though daring us to challenge him. "So what do you think you're doing?" He kicked at the sawdust and laughed derisively. "Is it that pile of junk you're fighting about?" He pointed with disdain. But then his attention was caught by something in it. Though exactly what was hard to say. Pierre Anton stepped closer and walked slowly around the heap. He studied little Emil's coffin for a while, with the rotting carcass of Cinderella on top. He considered Cinderella's head, high up at the top of the heap, then allowed his gaze to move from the telescope to the Dannebrog, to the desecrated Jesus on the rosewood cross, the boxing gloves, the snake in formaldehyde, the 6 blue braids, and the neon yellow bike. Then on to the prayer mat, and the crutches, and to dead Oscar Little, and Jan Johann's stiffened index finger. Then he caught sight of something that puzzled him. "What's that rag?" he asked. pointing to the checked handkerchief. "That's the meaning!" Sophie screamed hysterically. "That's the meaning!" Pierre Anton's eyes moved from Sophie to the rest of us. It was as though something was occurring to him. "Oh, so that's the meaning!" He burst out angrily and grabbed hold of Sophie. He took her by the shoulders and shook her until she stopped screaming. "And that's why you sold it!" "The meaning," Sophie whispered. "The meaning, ha!" Pierre Anton scoffed. "If that pile of garbage ever meant anything at all, it stopped the day you sold it for money." He laughed again. He let go of Sophie and looked across at Gerda. "How much did Oscar Little cost, Gerda?" "How much did Oscar Little cost, Gerda, eh?" Gerda didn't reply, just blushed and looked down. "King and country," he sneered. "You sold it all for a filthy lucre. You sold it all for a filthy $1, Frederick." He shook his head. "King and country," he sneered. "You sold it all for $3.50, Frederick." He shook his head. "I'm glad I'm not going to war with you as my general." Tears welled up in Frederick's eyes. "And the prayer mat, Hussein? Don't you believe in Allah anymore?" Pierre Anton stared at Hussein, who was standing with his head bowed. "What price was your faith?" Pierre Anton went on, naming the items in the heap of meaning one by one. And one by one we writhed. "And Jan Johan, why not let your whole hand go, if you're willing to sell your finger to the highest bidder? And you, Sophie, what have you got left? Now you've sold yourself." We didn't answer him. Just stood, scraping our feet in the sawdust, not daring to look, not at Pierre Anton, not at one another. "If it truly meant something, you wouldn't have sold it, would you?" Pierre Anton concluded his tirade and threw his arm out wide in the direction of the heap of meaning. Pierre Anton had won. But then he made a mistake. He turned his back on us. Chapter 24. Sophie was the first to lunge at him. And had the rest of us remained standing, Pierre Anton would have easily been able to shake her off. But we didn't. First followed Jan Johann, then Hussein, then Frederick, then Elise, then Gerda, Annalie, Holy Karl, Otto, and Huge Hans. And then there was almost no room left for anyone else to kick and punch Pierre Anton at the same time. I don't know if it was gruesome or not. Looking back on it now, it must have been very gruesome indeed. But that's not how I remember it. More that it was messy and good. It made sense to beat up Pierre Anton. It made sense to kick him. It was meaningful, even if he was down and unable to defend himself, and eventually wasn't even trying. It was he who had taken the heap of meaning from us, just as he had taken the meaning from us before. It was his fault, all of it, that Jan Johann had lost his right index finger, that Cinderella was dead, that Holy Karl had desecrated his Jesus, that Sophie had lost the innocence, that Hussein had lost his faith, that it was his fault we had lost our zest for life and the future, and we're now at our wits' end about everything. The only thing we were certain about was that it was Pierre Anton's fault, and that we were going to pay him back. I don't know what condition Pierre Anton was in when we left the sawmill. I do know what he looked like, although that wasn't what I told the police. He was lying all awkward, with his neck snapped back, his face all swollen and blue. Blood was running from his nose and mouth, and had also colored the back of his hand, which he had tried to shield himself with. His eyes were closed, but the left one was bulged out and seemed strangely askew beneath the gashed eyebrow. His right leg lay broken at a quite unnatural angle, and his left elbow was pointed in the wrong direction. It was quiet when we left, and we didn't say goodbye. Neither to one another, nor to Pierre Anton. That same night, the disused sawmill burned to the ground. Chapter 25. A Viking funeral. The disused sawmill burned all through the night, and still some the next morning. Then it was over. I arrived late in the morning. Most of the others were there already. We said hello, but we didn't talk. I considered what was left. the smoldering sight of a fire. Excuse me. I considered what was left. The smoldering sight of a fire. It was impossible to tell what had been sawmill and what had been heap of meaning. Apart from the charred remains of walls, everything else was ash. Gradually, the rest of them turned up, and soon the whole class was assembled. No one said anything, not even to our parents, or the police, or Tearing Tuesday, or to the people from the museum in New York. The world's press hadn't shown, but if they had, I knew we wouldn't have said anything to them either. We didn't ask about Pierre Anton. And it was a while before anyone connected his disappearance the previous day with the fire at the sawmill. It occurred to them only late that evening when his charred remains were found at the site of the fire. When the police got the idea that Pierre Anton had set fire to the heap of meaning and the disused sawmill, because he wouldn't accept we'd found the meaning and were now famous, none of us was arguing. It was just sad that he had gotten caught up in the flames himself. We attended the funeral. Some of us even cried. Sincerely, I believe. And I should know because I was one of them. We lost the money from the museum, since no one had thought of having the heap of meaning insured. But that wasn't why we cried. We cried because it was so sad and so beautiful, with all those flowers, including the white roses from our class. Because the shiny and unblistered white coffin. Hi, kitty. Because the shiny and unblistered white coffin, which was small despite being twice the size of little Emil's, shimmered and shone, along with the light reflecting from Pierre Anton's father's glasses, and because the music crept inside us, and became greater and wanted out again, without being able to. And it was so, whether we believed in the God we were singing for, or some other, or none at all. We cried because we had lost something and gained something else. And because it hurt both losing and gaining. And because we knew what we had lost, but weren't as yet able to put into words what it was that we had gained. What are you doing? Be careful under that chair, please. Kitty, you can't be under a rocking chair. What are you doing? Come here. Come here. Okay, after Pierre Anton's white and unblistered coffin had been lowered into the ground, after a gathering at the commune at Terringve 25, and after Mr. Eskildsen, Pierre Anton's father, and several people none of us recognized but guessed were Pierre Anton's family, had said a whole bunch of appreciative things about a Pierre Anton who sounded a little like the one that we knew, we went out to the burned-out sawmill. We somehow felt that it wouldn't be deemed appropriate for us to meet at the sawmill on this particular day. So for the first time in months, we left 3 at a time by our 4 different routes. The site was no longer smoldering. All the embers were extinguished. Hey, come up here. Hello. She's very distracting. We went by our 4 separate routes, 3 at a time. The site was no longer smoldering. All the embers were extinguished. Only ash and charred rubble remained. Cold and white, gray, black. In the place where the heap of meaning had been, the ashes appeared slightly thicker, though it was hard to be sure. The place was littered with pieces of roofing and what was left of the pillars and beams. We helped one another straighten the place up. We helped one another straighten the place up. It was heavy, dirty work, and we were black all over, even under our clothes. We spoke as little as possible, just indicated with a gesture and pointed when we needed someone to take hold of the other end of a beam or a stone. In garbage cans close by, we found empty bottles, plastic containers, and matchboxes. Anything that could be used. And Sophie ran home and took what she could find, so that eventually there was a receptacle for each of us. We used our hands to gather the ashes together. The receptacles were carefully closed on the grayish mass. That was all we had left of the meaning. And we needed to keep tight hold of it. For even though Pierre Anton was no longer sat hollering at us in his plum tree at Terringve 25, it still felt like we could hear him every time we passed. The reason dying is so easy is because death has no meaning, he hollered. And the reason death has no meaning is because life has no meaning. All the same, have fun. All the same, have fun. Excuse me. All the same, have fun. The reason death has no meaning is because life has no meaning. All the same, have fun. Chapter 26. That summer, we were scattered to the bigger schools to the north, south, east, and west. And Sophie was sent somewhere where they protect people like her from themselves. We stopped playing together and never met again, apart from by chance on the street, where it couldn't be avoided. No one has ever tried to bring us together for a class reunion or anything. And I doubt anyone would come if any of the teachers ever got the idea. It's 8 years ago now. It's 8 years ago now. I still have the matchbox with the ashes from the sawmill and the heap of meaning. Once in a while, I take it out and look at it. And when I carefully slide open the worn cardboard box and look into the gray ashes, I get this peculiar feeling in my stomach. And even if I can't explain what it is, I know that something has a meaning. And I know that meaning is not something to fool around with. Is it, Pierre Anton? Is it? Is it? The end. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Fuck yeah, bravo.